You ain't trying to make me believe in reincarnation, are you? Because you're pretty, but you ain't her. She got killed. Still no rest. How come, I wonder? Because there ain't no God and the whole world's empty and it doesn't matter what we do to each other? I hope not. I don't know what the police are doing. I hadn't heard a word from them in 7 goddamn months. I'll tell you this, I've heard an awful lot from them since I put them billboards up. The more you keep a case in the public eye, the better your chances are getting it solved. You take me down and arrest me.
They got nothing to arrest you for.
Not yet, you ain't. If I had some food, I'd give it to you. All I got is some Doritos. They might kill you. They're kind of pointy. Then where would we be?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Awards Watch Oscar podcast. I'm your host, Eric Anderson. This is podcast number 57. It is Sunday, September 23rd at the time of recording. I've got 2 Gold Rush Gang members with me today. I have Matt Dinn. Hello, Matt.
Hi.
And Jason Osiason. Hello, Jason.
Howdy.
All right. We're going to talk about the weirdness that's happening right now in the essential beginning of the awards race for at least some people. And that's that we're kind of a ship without a rudder or a boat without a captain, in the sense that there's not much of a real serious frontrunner right now. And we've already had Venice and Toronto and Telluride, and we're just about to get to the New York Film Festival, aka NIF, very, very soon. And both Jason and Matt were at Toronto, so I am going to bend their ear and lean into them quite a bit with this. First, I kind of want to get each of their impressions of the festival itself, as well as their favorites. So, Jason, just kind of give me an idea what you thought of this year's festival at Toronto.
So, going into Toronto, I wasn't very impressed with the impending lineup. Going into it, it was mostly the only movies I was really interested in were played already at like Cannes and Sundance and Telluride, but there was a lot of Toronto world premieres that ended up surprising that people didn't expect much from, like Molly's Game and what else? I, Tonya.
Mm-hmm.
So it ended up being a pretty consistent festival, and one of my favorites that played at TIFF that I ended up seeing in New York was the Florida Project, which we'll probably get to.
Yeah.
Also was really hot for me.
I imagine so. Matt, what did you think of Toronto this year?
Yeah, sort of similar to Jason. You know, the lineup at first was sort of, I felt it was sort of weak on paper. And like Jason said, there were actually some world premieres that surprised. Molly's Game, for one, definitely was one that I actually had a lot of fun with, even though I was sort of skeptical about it. There were a lot of post-production questions with that, like Sorkin firing his editor and a bunch of other stuff. So I was a little skeptical there, but it's a really fun movie. I don't know if it's as penetrating as it wants to be, but it's a lot of fun. I, Tonya played really well. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I know Jason was. But that was obviously a world premiere that surprised in terms of expectations to reality. And it worked out well for me because my favorite film of the festival actually won the People's Choice Award, which literally never happened, so that was nice.
All right, cool. So we could just jump right to that then. Because I was just going to mention that, yes, I, Tonya, which did debut here, managed second place with the People's Choice Award, which surprised a lot of people. In fact, the top 3, I think, in general, surprised most people and most of us that were doing a little bit of our general predicting. But there was also a bit of voting changes this year that might have led to that. I don't know. I'm not sure. But yes, as Matt said, his favorite, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, ended up being the People's Choice winner, and that was a big surprise, I think, to anybody. And one of the great surprises to me about that is the decade-long history of this prize winner in terms of the Oscars, which is really, really, really good. I want to ask each of you just kind of what you thought of the film. Jason, did you see the film? You did, right?
Three Billboards?
Yeah. I
saw it 3 times.
You did see it 3 times, exactly. So obviously you have a certain affinity to it. In the realm of what played, what are each of your guys' thoughts on that win? Does it make sense?
Yeah, because it plays so well. First 2 times I saw it was in a press screening, but the third time I saw it with in the infamous Princess of Wales Theater with a sold out crowd, and once you in the theater, you could tell this is a potential audience winner. It just plays so well. They laugh at all the right moments. People gasp. It's a very involving film.
Yeah. I agree with that. It sort of played a lot better than I expected, honestly, because a lot of the time when I go to TIFF, there's a lot of films that have a lot of dark humor in them that don't play as well with some of the, let's say, older and more conservative audience members at TIFF. But this one, right from the start, like Jason said, there's a lot of audience reaction involved. At all 4 screenings I heard about, there was a big sort of, interjections like gasping and ranting and raving about certain things happening within the movie. So I wasn't so surprised. I guess Shape of Water not placing at all was probably the biggest surprise, just because it played at the Elgin Theater, and there's scenes of the movie that are depicted within the Elgin Theater. So seeing that at the Elgin Theater, like Jason and I did, was sort of surreal. So I figured there would have been some affinity towards it because of that reason. And also Del Toro is so loved within Toronto. That one was a surprise, but I think it worked out well for Fox Searchlight because they had Shape of Water win Golden Lion, and then Three Billboards win People's Choice. So neither one of them plants sort of a big target on their back. That's just my thoughts.
I think that's a very succinct version of that, because a lot of times what ends up happening, and what certainly happened last year, is that we get these early front runners that play all of the top festivals, and it's September and we feel like we're just marching our way to the Dolby for the inevitable crowning of a film. And that's when at least the internet starts to get a little restless. And they start pointing out, well, maybe this movie isn't or shouldn't really be the front runner because of this. Or maybe this movie should get more attention because of this. And that certainly happened a lot last season. I wonder if maybe there is a certain level of social and political commentary in Three Billboards, as well as in a lot of other movies this year, that are going to play much larger than maybe other people expected. I still sort of feel like The Shape of Water is a kind of de facto front runner. It's done really well. It's played all the festivals, so it's got a nice place cut out for itself. But I wonder if something like Three Billboards has the surprise factor to it that could really break through. Because when we're looking at statistics in history, because there's always that at least I start from, and statistics in history go only so far until they don't anymore. But with winning something like Toronto's People's Choice, the history behind that is really, really strong. And I think a lot of people didn't really peg Three Billboards even as a low tier Best Picture nominee. Definitely for McDormand and for the screenplay for McDonagh. But now it kind of looks like there's definitely the potential for much, much more for it. And would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, when I first saw the Three Billboards trailer, I expected a really outlandish comedy, and I didn't really get that. I got a story of grief, change, anxiety, despair. It was surprisingly really grounded and mature work that I didn't expect, and he fleshed out all the characters from Woody to Sam to Francis, just characters that you instantly fall for. And I think the movie is going to go really far. Not only does it play well, I think it's going to end up being one of the most critically acclaimed films of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Jason says. It is surprising the sort of dimension the characters are given when you sort of when you see the trailer and whatnot. You're not really expecting that. And even I would say McDonagh's previous work, this shows a real sort of growth and maturity for him. Especially the third act, how it evolves. It's really surprisingly emotional, and the emotion sneaks up on you. And I think especially, Sam Rockwell's character, it's hard to go into detail without spoiling anything, but the way his character evolves is really, really surprising and sort of catches you off guard. He sort of subverts sort of the character he's used to playing in a really interesting way and sort of changes and evolves. And like Jason said, you really just fall for all these characters.
And not only that, it's his change is really organic. It doesn't feel forced. You really believe it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the way sort of the characters evolve and change throughout the movie is surprising. It's layered, and I think it shows real growth for him as a filmmaker. And that's a big reason why I think that even though some are dismissing him for a director nomination because he's a playwright, because the film's very writerly, I don't necessarily buy that. I think he can absolutely get a director nomination. So we'll see, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of thinking going into many of these shots that even the cinematography, you can just see very meticulous staging of that. As I watched it the 3 times I've seen it, just impressed me more and more.
It's really exciting to hear. I'm going to be seeing this in a couple of weeks, but just to throw out some of these stats, it's pretty impressive, and it's a pretty convincing argument. Since 2008, 7 out of 8 of the winners have scored Best Director nominations, and 3 of them have won. And in the scope of the statistics and history of the People's Choice winner at TIFF, there's one that stands out that is the giant asterisk for everybody, and it's 2011's Where Do We Go Now, which went nowhere, obviously.
The artist was 2 that year, I think.
It was, and it didn't even end up in the top 3. So that could be The Shape of Water this year. But when you look at everything else outside of that year, Slumdog won, Precious, The King's Speech, Silver Linings Playbook, 12 Years a Slave, The Imitation Game, Room, La La Land. That's not kidding around. I mean, those are movies that all got Best Picture nominations, and most of them got director nominations as well as multiple acting nominations. It elevates Three Billboards from being a maybe it's going to get 2 or 3 nominations to maybe it's going to get 5 to 7. I think in a pretty serious way.
Even below the lines, I was really impressed with what's his name? What's the composer's name? Burwell.
Carter
Burwell.
Carter Burwell. Yeah, his score that I was very impressive. I know he's competing with himself with Wonderstruck as well,
which is really, really, really good. By the way, the score is pretty incredible there. So, and amazingly, he only earned his first nomination just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think an editing nomination is possible too. There's some showy editing in there, and sort of films that have balanced comedy and drama lately have found a way to get in there. I'm thinking The Big Short, David O. Russell's films. So I think that's definitely a possible nomination too.
No, absolutely. If a film is top 5, then something like editing is definitely there for the film. If I'm looking at our predictions right now, and in editing, 3 Billboards is number 7, and in score also number 7. But you go to other categories, like picture is number 4, and director is number 5, and people are, predicting wise at least, very much responding to this win as something very, very serious. And it's kind of cool because it is a bit of a surprise, and it's the kind of surprise that I think this year really needs. I couldn't be more happy that this year is so weirdly up in the air, and not just Best Picture. It's kind of all over the place. There is no one right now that feels like, a Viola Davis or anything. It's really exciting. It's going to be, I think, one of the best seasons in a long time, until of course we get to the end of it and things start really taking shape. But even then, the majority of industry awards are already going to have decided before the nominations even come out. So I'm pretty excited for this year. Was there anything else from Toronto that you guys want to pick out that might be kind of like a thing? I mean, good or bad?
How bad Roman J. Israel was.
I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was coming.
It's just such a weird movie. I mean, it's not. I don't even think it's necessarily as bad as Jason says it is, but it's so totally bizarre, and it's so unlike what I was expecting. It's not even a commercial movie. Like, I don't see that movie making money, even on Denzel's name. It's just so all over the place, and there's so many things going on.
It's so meandering.
Yeah,
it's so lost. It just feels incomplete. Like, it's just without a purpose.
It really felt like, at the very least, it needed more time in the editing room. I feel like they made a big mistake rushing out to Toronto.
That's what I was just going to ask. That the principal photography and post production was so fast that maybe it just seemed like it was they should have held off maybe a bit, maybe waited for AFI or next year.
I don't think that movie could be fixed because its tone or characters. There's nothing that could have saved this movie.
I don't necessarily think so either, but I'm just surprised it was such a meandering movie that they rushed it out in the first place. It just seemed like a bizarre way to go about it. And it was a huge disappointment for me because I love sort of the legal thrillers in the vein it was being described as, Michael Clayton, The Verdict. So, I mean, it was a massive disappointment for me.
This teased it being like a comedy, and it just didn't go there either.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
It's just another mess up. Like last year, Sony had Billy Lynn in New York as a special event. It was like last minute programmed, and now they did the same thing with Toronto and kind of flopped again.
Yeah,
I don't. Sony's not really great at this game.
No, they haven't been for a while either. So.
No, they really have not. That was, it was honest. That was like their main shot was that, and
I was so excited. I was like first row and everything.
All I can remember is that one picture that you sent out. That was that I do not like this.
Yeah, I wrote that like 40 minutes into it.
My goodness, that was aggressively bad. That was unfortunate.
We could also talk about downsizing if you wanted.
Yes, that's actually exactly where I wanted to go next, because that's a movie we have talked about a lot, both on podcasts and in the forums, just based on its topic and subject and test screenings and those responses, and even though I'm trying to hold back on a certain level of belief in test screenings, they kind of, this was a movie that had quite a few of them, and really drastically different ones. And so the response at Venice was pretty good. And
more
then
than pretty good. It was like,
it was pretty ecstatic. Yeah.
It was okay.
The reviews, not the reactions, the reviews.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it went to Telluride, which I think at least Payne and Paramount and anybody else watching, thought that this was going to be kind of an easy ride. It's home turf, and he does well there. And then those responses came in, and it felt like it sunk the movie.
And, beyond recovery.
Yeah.
I don't think this movie can ever swing back.
That's kind of where I'm at too. And if you look at, any of our predictions since we started doing this back in March, something like Downsizing has been, everything from like top 5 down to like it's barely an other contender now, if that. And currently, at the moment, it's in the other contenders section. It doesn't have a single vote from any of the 10 people in the Gold Rush gang.
I mean, the trajectory of the movie is just so bizarre because the touchscreen, we heard such, mixed and negative things about the tone of the movie and everything like that. And then it screens at Venice and these sort of raves come from the trades and it's like, oh, maybe they fixed it. And then Telluride comes and TIFF comes and it's like, it's like a roller coaster. It was like,
it's fun to watch.
Going up and then it went straight down. And it was just and I saw the movie at TIFF and like the first half is I would say pretty strong. And then it's sort of just like I said, it's like a roller coaster. It starts off really well, and then it just goes downhill from there. Once it hits like sort of the halfway mark, and especially the last 30 to 40 minutes are just really misguided. It's just a bizarre sort of way to go about it. It's like he mined sort of the most interesting subject and found the most boring way to present it and go about it and depict it. And I don't see any nominations. I mean, Hong Chow is maybe its best shot, and
I even think she's too divisive. Okay, yeah, go.
No,
sorry.
The issue with her is her character, how it's written. People are already getting riled up about that, and frankly, for good reason. And the other part of the issue with her is that she's in what I think even fans of the movie would agree is the weaker half of the movie. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't really see... I mean, I could see like a Golden Globe nomination for her. I could see that, but that's probably it. Unless she gets critic support, which I doubt, but I guess is somewhat possible because sort of the trades and the higher end critics seem a little higher on it than maybe others. So I don't know.
It's funny that I'll call back to something that you mentioned is that it's something Payne I think has generally been able to do is actually take people that seem very ordinary and create something very extraordinary about them. And it sounds like this is the exact opposite, that he took a high gimmick and a high concept and did the dullest possible thing to it as he could.
Exactly.
and that is, I mean, that's deadly. It's deadly. This is a giant $70 million gamble from Paramount, who is, unlike last year, having an extraordinarily shitty year. And
it's really telling that they're not even showing the third act in the trailer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I noticed that. And I mean, look, I get no pleasure from giving this movie shit because, it's the type of $70 million, high concept, high budgeted film directed at adults for people with functioning brains that frankly aren't getting made very much anymore at the studio level. So the fact that I thought this movie didn't work was a huge disappointment because it's like, it's going to make it so that less films like it are made because I don't think it's going to make any money and I don't think it's going to get any sort of awards traction. So it's a disappointment. Probably
you just have to...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I just thought Payne just needed to embrace the weirdness more of the concept.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I think that might be exactly the problem right there, is that in his smaller budgeted films and more independent films, he was able to do that. But it seems to me that with this price tag and with the backing of Paramount, that maybe they were just a little too post-it note heavy with ideas. I don't know. It seems like he was not able to make the movie that he wanted to, or it was just a terrible idea to begin with. Either way, it seems like Matt Damon is like the persona non grata this season. At
Yeah,
least,
didn't Ann Thompson put out a tweet about him getting some like career achievement award from like BAFTA or something like that, and saying made a crack about how it was going to be the only award he was going to win this year? I thought that was pretty funny.
it was fantastic, and I praise Queen Anne for that legendary shade.
Yeah.
Because it was amazing. Because yes, exactly. Between this and Suburbicon, Paramount went pretty deep into Venice this year because they also had Mother. And that's their trifecta this year. And I'm pretty much willing to say at this point that all three films are going to be empty-handed on Oscar nomination morning. So, sorry, Paramount. You don't have offenses. You don't have an arrival. You don't even have silence this year. So, it's not happening. And that's kind of a funny thing because we talk about that a lot. We're talking about it right now. When a studio has, a large amount of movies that they can push and what gets in. And we did this last year with Paramount with those three films, and two of them got in. We did it with 20th Century Fox a couple of years ago, and that was The Martian and Joy and The Revenant. And we know how that played out as well. So, a studio with three films trying to get into a category that doesn't even have like a solid 10, but it could be 5 and it could be 10, seems kind of risky. So I'm certainly not willing to look at any studio at this point to do 3. Although we can bring this back to 3 Billboards in the Shape of Water. Because most people are seeing those two films as top 5. Those are both Fox Searchlight. And there are a handful of pundits, whether they are doing this for, personal thoughts or realistic Oscar thoughts, that think Battle of the Sexes, which just opened this weekend, is going to factor into that as well. And I kind of have a hard time seeing that happen. And I'm going to shoot to you, Jason, as the sole person who has seen the film so far. And I know you don't have exactly the greatest thoughts about it, but...
I don't even remember it.
That is terrible and sexist of you.
I think the best part of it is the romance explored between Emma Stone and Andrea
Riseborough.
Yeah, and then Bobby Riggs just disrupts the picture anytime he's on screen, and I just I checked out.
Well, straight guys end up disrupting lots of lesbian romances in real life too. That's just kind of what they do. They're assholes. So. And
they just cast limitless comedians like Sarah Silverman and what's his name from blanking on his name, Portlandia actor
Fred Armisen.
Yeah, Fred Armisen. Tired. Yeah, it's just kind of I less watching them. I'm just watching imitations of these characters. I just don't believe anything I'm watching. I don't even see Emma. I just see Emma Stone in a wig or with black hair. I just didn't really believe anything I was watching.
That's too bad.
I think it's very of the moment, this movie, and Emma Stone's pretty good in it, but I just think people are just gonna forget about this movie really quickly.
Okay, that's I'm.
It's fine. It's not a bad movie. It has the best of intentions.
And that's exactly the thing. I think that that some pundits are kind of looking at this as more exactly that, as intentions and as a social and political thing, which is why I brought that up at the very beginning of the podcast, is that we're looking at a handful of films that are going to potentially be those kind of movies. Battle of the Sexes and The Post, Get Out, are films that are going to look at, and Florida Project too, are going to look at social and political climate, both as it exists and as a parallel, and really kind of gravitate to that, and certain things, and Three Billboards too, for that matter. Certain things might feel like relics, like Dunkirk or Darkest Hour, are just going to kind of feel like, all right, well, that's the kind of thing that we used to really like. This is what we like now. And that's completely, I feel like it's a reasonable expectation, because we have 1,300 new members in the last 2 years that do not represent the makeup of the 6,000 that we had before. And we already saw the first example of that with Moonlight's Win. So I don't see that we're not going to see some more really cool, wild shifts in Academy voting. I just think we're going to.
Like Battle of the Sexes is a movie that, on one hand, it's fighting for equality, and then on the other hand, like discovering your identity. And I just felt just the whole tennis side of the film just lacked authenticity. But like as like a romance, I just really feel like the movie works very well. But it just felt a little tonally lost. But I do think I agree with you that people are like leaning towards it because for its political messaging.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie, but I remember the reactions on Telluride somewhere, like comparing it to like the election, and how like it's like a big brash sort of hyper talkative man sort of being taken down by like a strong-willed woman, and how there was sort of like some people were saying like, oh,
hyper talkative, not really though.
Well, I mean, like, I haven't seen the movie. I'm just sort of giving.
I know that.
But like, basically saying like, hey, if you want to see the election result that you want, go watch Battle of the Sexes. So yes. I see what Eric's saying about sort of the potential political, socio-political overtones in the movie, but I just don't think it's going to have the legs, and I think it's up against the fact that it's distributed by a studio who have just 2 movies that are way stronger than it. So I mean,
yes, and one of those was something that came out of kind of nowhere. So they, you know. They're good at what they do when they have good product, and they're certainly looking to bounce back after how terrible last year was for them with Birth of a Nation. So they have 2 things that are absolutely major players now. So I think Battle of the Sexes seems like a very Golden Globe kind of movie, very BFCA kind of movie. But I feel like it's going to end there.
Yeah, I agree.
Before I saw it, I thought it'd be like a movie and I could still like make an impact throughout the season. But I do think people are just not going to be really passionate about the movie. And I don't think Emma Stone has like nothing like against her as like an actor, but I just feel like she doesn't have a lot to do in the movie. That I just can't picture people like caring to vote for her in December.
So it's not the type of afterglow nomination that happens. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that's why people are sort of predicting her right now and leaning towards her simply because of that.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like too. Okay, I want to talk about the Florida Project because it opens in a couple of weeks. Matt, I know you haven't seen it, so I apologize.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, you start this one off because you saw it first, and then I'll.
But yeah, I saw it last week. I'm kind of obsessed with Brooklyn Prince, and I follow her on Instagram, and she is adorable, and she like likes and retweets like everything I do. I'm like, girl, you are like 6 years old. Come on, get your parents together here. It is a movie that I cannot wait to see again because I loved it, and it was so wonderfully subversive. It makes perfect sense for Sean Baker as a film after Tangerine. It's beautiful to look at. It is tragic and heartwarming at the same time. It has this. I haven't written my review of it yet, and I'm still like putting all of it together in my head. But it has this like bizarre, crazy element where, you know how you love when like little kids cuss or old people cuss, and how like kind of funny it is. There's like an element to that, and it's like right at the beginning, these kids are like terrible. They like scream "fuck you" and "eat my shit," to adults, and they're terrible children. And if you were, viewing them as a real person in the real world, you'd be like, "Oh my God, where are your parents? These kids are terrible." But there is like something incredibly, I don't know, sympathetic and involving with these kids, especially Brooklyn Prince.
Just this perfect like hybrid between like hope and misery.
Oh my God. And it's something that I really kind of struggle with when I'm watching a movie like this. And it's also, something like Beasts of the Southern Wild, where I'm watching this from the point of view of a middle-aged white man in Northern California, and I'm watching extremely, extremely poor, desperate people. What is that? What is it saying about me that I am getting a type of entertainment or enjoyment out of a film that is really, really examining how poor and of the moment that these people are? It generally is. It really is something that I struggle with as a viewer. How am I supposed to feel? How do I feel about that? I don't want to feel like I am looking at this from above and looking down. And I think the thing that is so good about Sean Baker, and that he does with this, as he did with Tangerine, is that he never kind of... The immediacy of everything never really allows you to be that distant from it. In Florida Project, there's a lot of incredible establishing shots. But it's really about more kind of giving you an idea of the everyday, just the colors and the massive businesses and how everything looks. But I never feel like I am looking at them from above, and that is, I don't know. It's something I think that is so
real
crucial.
Locations? That's like another thing. Like,
yes,
I've been to Orlando. It's just I've never seen it look like that.
Well, that's actually the great thing about this, and that there's that moment in the movie when those people that are coming in for their honeymoon, and they have booked the wrong place, that is, off-site from Disney. And that's what this is. This is off-site from Disney. So it doesn't look like Disney World. It doesn't look like Orlando. It doesn't look like what we think that we're supposed to be seeing. I think it does that like perfectly. It's I don't know.
He doesn't like... The characters don't scream like pity me, pity me. That's what's like great about it.
No, because they're
observation.
They're constantly thwarting you with defiance in not just liking them, but in liking the movie.
You just leave thrilled, emotional. I just can't stop thinking about it, and I think
I've
it
liked
creates
it more
like
and more
incredibly three-dimensional characters. Like Willem Dafoe, like there's this scene with a trespasser that just says everything you need to know about his philosophy as an individual. I just think, just to go into him, Dafoe's amazing.
Yes,
It's raw, pathetic. I love him.
It's really amazing that sequence that you're talking about is really... It kind of it pushes you to the limit because you're expecting what's going to happen, and you don't get it yet. And then you don't get it yet, and you keep not getting it until Baker and Dafoe are ready to give it.
Yes,
and
that's just direction right there.
And it's so powerful. It's holding back instead of the immediate gratification is such an important part, I think, of certain elements of filmmaking. Not every movie needs to be like this. This doesn't need to be what Dunkirk and The Post look like. This needs to be what this movie looks like. And it's
between it and Call Me by Your Name, it has one of the most emotionally packed, unforgettable endings I'll ever see in my life.
Oh my god, the fucking ending of this movie.
It just blew my socks off. It's like all I think about, and I feel like it's going to be in every end of the year montage at the end of the year. That sequence. I don't want to spoil.
I know. I don't want to say anything about it.
It's just going to be in every montage.
I mean, the movie comes out in less than 2 weeks, so people can see it. Again, Matt, I apologize. My goodness. I hope you're having a snack or a drink or something right now. Oh my god.
It's going to play so well if people give it a chance.
It's going to, oh my god. It's the kind of thing that if you have stuck with the movie and with the characters, you're going to go, oh my god. It's going to feel exactly the way that it is supposed to feel. So I think that's all.
I just left I'm relieving my seat, just a blubbering mess. I that and Call Me by Your Name are the only two movies that have moved me to that point this year.
And I definitely want to talk about that with you because I know you are a part of the Call Me by Your Name Mafia, and and we could talk about that sidebar. Put a pin in that. And you are obsessed with this movie in a way that even gay Twitter is not. So we should.
It was really special because I saw the world premiere on my birthday. It was just everything just came together for me.
Goodness, girl, my.
And I know I've been tooting Chalamet's horn since Sundance, and I'm really happy it's worked out. Everyone's supporting him, just like I.
I just want to interject. I saw Call Me by Your Name at TIFF, and I was a massive, massive fan of it. And I just want to point out that before I saw the movie, I wasn't predicting Chalamet, and after it, I was. And I don't think it's mostly my inherent bias of the fact that I loved him in the movie so much as that it's such a raw, sort of dedicated, surprisingly emotional performance from a young actor that just it rarely comes along for a lead actor of his age, of his status, of his stature to give this type of performance. It's in many ways I think a landmark performance. It's just this type of performance is not given by an actor of his age. It just doesn't come along very often. So I think it's a special performance, and I think the category isn't as packed as it usually is. That I don't have any problems or questions about him getting in. I think he'll absolutely get nominated for a night.
I love the passion, yeah.
I feel like he's kind of undeniable at this point. And it would.
And he's just blowing up as an actor too.
He is. He's got a huge year. He's in Lady Bird. He's in Hostiles, which will probably be out next year, but still, it's impressive and it's interesting because it's not that common for a male-led film to not get its male lead in if the film gets in Best Picture. Last year
he is the movie. That's
last year was great proof of that. Most years are great proof of that as long as there is a clear male lead. 2015 was kind of weird because Spotlight was all ensemble and everybody went supporting. Big Short was very supporting, and the only leads that got in were DiCaprio and Damon. Everything else was either female or ensemble. But But this year had a lot of male leads, and 3 of them got in, and 1 of them won. So I feel like that is definitely in Chalamet's favor quite a bit. And right now he's at number 4 in the Gold Rush Gang's list, and it's very close to number 3. He's right behind Bryan Cranston, which we'll see, at NIF. I know, Jason, you are going to that, so...
Yeah, it's already started.
Has it already started?
Yeah, for press.
Oh, okay. So we'll hear that really quickly.
Yeah, I see the link later on Thursday morning.
Okay.
Which I've heard mixed things. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm. That's why I'm really curious, because right now there's a lot of things that are in placeholder status. At least in this category, you've got Tom Hanks and Cranston and Day-Lewis, who are all kind of just like sitting there in the top 5, but they're unseen, so those can move at any time. And then
Sight unseen, that movie's a little weird because there doesn't seem to be a consensus on who's lead between Cranston and Carell either.
Yes.
Like in the poster, Carell's like given the main focus. He kind of seems like he's lead in the trailer, or kind of two-handed between him and Cranston. So that I don't know if that how it'll impact their chances either if the movie hits well.
Yeah, I'm really curious about how that's going to play out as well, and that could certainly impact Cranston heavily in this. So I'm very curious. That kind of emerged, and I'm going to continue with Best Actor since that's where we kind of are. Do you know where I'm going with this, Jason?
Yeah.
Yes, I think you know where I'm going with
the undeniable.
So yes, I am going to Jake Gyllenhaal in Stronger. Which, shut up. And I say this because it's not just me being like some kind of crazy fangirl. I'm like, oh my god, Jake! Because overall, his reviews are outstanding, as well as the films and Tatiana Maslany. So I'm not like sitting on the outside acting like a crazy person. But this does look like, at least this year, a very good year for Jake Gyllenhaal to get finally his second nomination after being snubbed so viciously and horribly for Nightcrawler.
Problem with that movie is, though, it's out in September and it doesn't feel like Roadside believes in it as much as critics and audiences do.
Okay, that's no. I'm just no.
You don't think? I think Wide was such a huge mistake and it's backfiring.
It's not even that wide. It's like semi-wide. But it probably would
have
have
been
been
short-term memory, and I feel like you go. Sorry.
It probably would have been a good idea to do something more like what Fox Searchlight did with Battle of the Sexes, or what Focus Features did with Victoria and Abdul, and those both went into tiny release, like 4 to 20 theaters, and had huge per screen averages as a result. But they were going to anyway with numbers that small. So I think what Lionsgate and Roadside was trying to do was trying to strike a balance in the middle of not be, so competitive in that tiny limited release market, but not obviously be wide as well. And it was okay. It's not a great box office number for the weekend. It's like 1.8 million. And I do genuinely think that the reason is because the subject matter seems too dark or too depressing. I think if people read the reviews and understand the point of view of the film, that it will bring them to it, because it isn't depressing. It's not that dark. There is more humor in it than I was certainly expecting. And I do I do think if people pay enough attention, that will help the film. It will keep it afloat.
I think it'll be a movie that'll play well on screen or two, personally. But also, I just want to say that, and I think Eric's going to get a kick out of what I'm about to say. Jake Gyllenhaal, to me, there's no American-born actor under 40, I think, doing as many interesting things as he is right now, working with as many interesting directors as he is right now.
And in theater, too.
Taking as many risks as he is right now. And it's so hard for someone like him who grew up in the industry to break out of that shell and be willing to take the kind of risk he is. So I think it would be extremely bizarre if he was snubbed again, because I just feel like that you got to have respect and admiration for what he's doing right now, the risks he's taking, and how far he's come as an actor growing up in the industry. So I share Jason's skepticism with what Roadside is doing with the movie. I haven't moved him into my predictions yet, but I think I'm going to. I haven't seen the movie yet, so I'm probably going to wait to see it and then maybe make a decision after that. But I can't see a situation where he's snubbed if he doesn't have the precursor support and all the ingredients there. I just don't see a scenario. So
I mean, the scenario would be there are 4 or 5 actors who come from Best Picture nominees.
I know, but it would just be so cruel. It would be cruel.
But
That's
as I said, just 2 years ago, we only had 2 of 5 nominees that came from Best Picture nominees, and one of them was the clear winner at that time. So
I will say this: it's going to be very interesting if that 5th slot comes down to Tom Hanks and Jake Gyllenhaal, based on the fact they both have recent high-profile snubs. That would be quite something. So we'll see, though.
I would have a heart attack. Oh my god! No,
I'm a little worried it's going to end up like The Session. So that's my fear for it, where he's not playing like this famous historical figure. He goes through a physical transformation, but like the movie injects humor into the biopic, but it also like rids itself of every cliche and emotional manipulation in the book. So I think it's like going to play well, but I feel like it might lack the passion for his performance by the end of the year. And he might be up against several other actors like Oldman, Lewis, Chalamet, maybe even Cranston, who people are going to like more, and they're going to be in stronger movies. And then you also have the problem with Andrew Garfield with a somewhat similar role, who just embraces probably everything Stronner subverts.
I disagree completely.
I don't know.
I don't think that they're in the same place.
I wouldn't underestimate Bleecker Street and Andrew Garfield's Afterglow potential.
No,
I'm
not underestimating either of them. Essentially, I think they're both thirsty enough to try and get as much attention as possible. One thing I feel pretty strongly about with Stronger, though, is that it's Lionsgate with Roadside doing the U.S. distribution, and that combination this is their only film this year. Lionsgate is tied to Amazon with Last Flag Flying and The Big Sick, and Roadside is attached to Amazon with Wonderstruck. But I feel like the combination of these two...
And The Big Sick, right?
No, The Big Sick is Amazon and Lionsgate.
Okay.
Just like Last Flag Flying. Wonderstruck is Amazon and Roadside together.
Gotcha. This
is the only Lionsgate and Roadside together. So I'm kind of looking at that as, all right, this can be, a push that exists, entirely on its own outside of Amazon. So I feel like they are really doing that. They're trying. Gyllenhaal and Jeff Bauman have been everywhere. And it did not result in huge box office. And like I said earlier, I went to a
Q&A of Stronner, and it was 30% full.
I went to Q&A on Wednesday, and it was 100% full.
Yeah, was Jake there though?
Yes, he was like...
I didn't have Jake.
He was like 3 feet from me. And
Yeah.
you know what that means to me.
I get.
But I mean, I will say that if Jeff Bauman, the guy Jake plays, is coming to all the Q&As, he's conversing with the industry crowds and whatnot. That's just definitely going to help Jake and whatnot, because even though he may not be the most famous historical figure, he's a huge sign of hope and diligence and perseverance in America, especially with this being such a recent tragedy that it might have more precedence than, say, someone playing a historical figure from 100 years ago. So I mean, I think it'll definitely help him if he keeps sort of attending the Q&As and industry events and keeps supporting the film and whatnot.
And if Lionsgate is smart, they will Philomena his ass out there at every single event. And when you look at the main contenders for Best Actor, there are only a couple that are playing real life people. Gary Oldman is, Andrew Garfield is, Jake Gyllenhaal, Tom Hanks. Those are the top people. James Franco, Chadwick Boseman. I'm not forgetting, the lower tiers, but still.
I'm going to put this out here right now. James Franco should not be completely discounted. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I don't think he should be either.
It's SAG bait.
Exactly. I think that movie's gonna play extraordinarily well to industry crowds. Extraordinarily well. It might not have the full critic support, but it's gonna play well with industry crowds. It just plays well in general, the movie, but I think especially the industry crowds, it's a hoot. It's a lot of fun, and he's really good in it, and it's a surprisingly three-dimensional performance. Full-bodied, transformative. There's a lot there. There's a lot going into that performance that's more than just mimicry.
Do you think Roadside has what it takes, because their last nomination was Albert Nobbs in 2011, and they failed with All Is Lost in Mr. Holmes?
Ouch.
Which people believed in both of them for quite a while, especially Robert Redford as a potential winner at the time.
Well, he won LA. That was such a shitty little side deal, because it made everybody go, "Oh, okay, he's a contender." If that hadn't happened, people would have been able to get rid of Redford much earlier.
Yeah. That was just such a bizarre scenario, seeing an actor of his stature win one of the 3 major critic awards, because typically they don't go for major movie stars, even if they're older, unless they're a surefire sort of Oscar nominee. And to see that fizzle out was just sort of bizarre. And like you said, it gave everyone hope, or at least the thought that it was going to happen, and then it just completely fizzled out once the industry nominations came in. Because he didn't even get a SAG nomination. He's Robert Redford. He didn't even get a SAG
That was the
nomination.
great irony. It's like, how do you not get SAG when you're somebody like Robert Redford and you're in a movie where you're the only fucking actor?
Yeah. Remember he got stunt ensemble, right?
That was that was insult to injury right there.
That was actually kind of hilarious in hindsight. Like, it's just proof he actually saw the movie and then still didn't fucking nominate him.
Yes. All right, I want to actually get back to your James Franco thing, because I'm toying with the idea too. I'm really excited for the idea of this movie becoming something. But I mean, don't you think that you need to have a certain working knowledge maybe of The Room?
Yeah.
This isn't the same as Ed Wood, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's fair to an extent. I think you need to at least have, even if you haven't seen the movie, I think you at least need to have a knowledge of what the movie represents and what the movie is.
They try to do that at the very start of the movie.
Yeah. So I mean, I think for people with no knowledge of The Room, it may prove difficult to fully invest in, or at least have sort of some insight going into the movie about what exactly the dynamics of it is. But if you have any sort of recollection of it, connection towards it, it's a movie that plays really well, has a lot of industry references, has a lot of celebrity cameos, both within the context of the movie itself, actors playing roles, and then celebrities, directors playing themselves, a couple instances. So it's going to be hard for a performance like that to get nominated. but it would be one of the coolest nominations in the history of the Academy Awards. Point blank. It's not even like my favorite performance of the year or anything, but for him to get nominated for a role like that, for a performance like that, would be cool. Almost too cool, I want to say, but like Eric mentioned, the Academy, it's changing, so the dynamics of it, the type of movies they're responding to, so who knows? I'm hopeful for it. It's not my absolute favorite movie of the year, but it's probably the movie that would be the coolest to see in the awards discussion, so that's why I'm pulling for it.
Well, it's funny because they've kind of done, the traditional thing, and they've hauled out, fucking Tommy Wiseau to screenings and stuff.
When I first saw it, he walked out at the ending, and then now he's fully on board. I wonder, what was the conversation?
Oh my god! It's I don't know if A24 is really smart, but they've got a huge slate this year. They have so many things. If they can find a way to send a screener out that has both movies, that would be really smart.
Yeah, I think that would be clever, actually. That would be smart.
I don't think they're allowed to do that.
They can do that with critics and stuff, but they can't do it with the Academy.
Or SAG, yeah.
They can do a SAG, I'm sure.
No, you can't send another movie.
Well, maybe. Maybe like a B-side,
Critics they can give gifts to. SAG.
What they could do is have screenings with both movies, because they're both only like an hour and a half long.
Like a SAG special event or something. Yeah.
You could absolutely do that, and then Q&As and stuff. They could pull it off. They could do it. But again, I mean, A24 is packed and stacked. So I don't know if that would even be a priority for them.
Yeah. Do you maybe want to just talk about Lady Bird for a bit? Because I know Jason's got some sort of skepticism about that movie, so I just want to maybe...
because we are on the A24 train right now, which, is also the Florida Project, which we spoke of earlier. It's The Disaster Artist, and it is also Lady Bird. There's more. There's also Killing of a Sacred Deer, and I mean, they have a lot, and they are going to be under scrutiny this year more than any studio after just winning. So and they are making some changes in their release dates for movies, and it's clear that they're doing so in an effort to be more visible and to, I think, kind of establish more dominance. But that's just my thought. So, yes, please tell me, Jason, your thoughts on Lady Bird. I think I should be seeing that in a week.
It's really solid. It's a really good movie. I love Greta Gerwig. My only skepticism with it, I just feel like it's a pretty familiar it's like a coming of age. It doesn't do anything really distinctive perspective wise. I really enjoyed it. I think it's like a more, you're laughing I hate it.
I'm laughing because you sound like Jesse Eisenberg in a Woody Allen movie right now.
Right.
You're where you get really higher at the end of your thing, and then I just don't believe you. I think I'm not sure if I believe you there.
No, I saw the movie with Jason, so I knew he liked it a lot. I was just referring to sort of his skepticism over its awards chances, and I guess the biggest takeaway from the movie for me was I was really, really moved by Laurie Metcalf's performance. But I think Jason and I talked about it a bit, how the performance is very low key, very subtle.
She has a really amazing scene at the end that's captured all in her facial expressions, but I think it's a little brief, but it's it's very moving.
Yeah.
And graceful, and she could get a nomination, but I think it with Sands, it would need a Best Picture nomination. Also, I just can't picture this as I don't picture her winning critic awards for this. Mm-hmm. That's my main issue. I don't think she'll have the passion to get in alone. She'll need Lady Bird too, and she might get a little lost with between the other supporting actress contenders who who coattail off their movies in the end.
Well, I mean,
She's right up there.
right now, our top 3 supporting actresses are all playing the moms in their movies.
Yeah.
And 2 of them against Best Actress contenders. So,
And I think
possible.
the interesting thing is, and maybe perhaps what Jason is suggesting, is that Allison Janney and Holly Hunter, I assume, are the 2 other characters you're talking about.
Yes.
And Mary J. Blige from Mudbound.
And Melissa Leo, if we're talking about mothers and not just moms.
Yeah, but the Holly Hunter and Allison Janney characters are far more outward, far more outspoken in their movies. They have a lot of more showy scenes, while Laurie Metcalf's character is a lot more. It's a lot more what's going on inside her. A lot more subtle performance, a lot more interior performance. You sort of read a lot of the movie through her face. Like Jason said, even her big scene near the end of the movie, she doesn't really say anything. It's all sort of what's going on within sort of the framework of her face, what she's doing.
And I wish it had more of that. Like, her performance, it kind of just shifted that way towards the end, which I kind of wish, it had a little bit more of that its running time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I see Jason's skepticism, but I actually disagree. I think Laurie Metcalf could be a Critic Award favorite, just because I think she's one of those sort of character actresses who's been working a long time, hasn't really gotten her due, and this could be sort of the perfect opportunity to do that.
The problem is, there's a bigger character actress who's
that's what I was
all going to rally around. And
the problem is, Allison Janney is probably the more likely for people to rally around her. Though perhaps not with Critic Awards, because I think Lady Bird is going to be far more of a critic's favorite than I, Tonya will be. But industry could be a different story. Industry,
I think Laurie could totally get nominated. I just think Allison Janney and Holly Hunter are just a little bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think
maybe Metcalf, her performance resonates with more people, but I just feel like people are just gonna rally more in the end, and Janney's just gonna steamroll the Critic Awards in the same way her husband from Juno did for Whiplash.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Metcalf's problem is she's just dealing with 2 similar characters who are far more outspoken, outward. So that's going to be her big struggle. But critics have awarded subtle performances plenty before, so I could see her winning, major critic prizes.
I just think Janney just is the disruptor.
Yeah, I agree.
Original screenplay, regardless of what happens with the movie, I think people are passionate about it, and rightfully so.
Oh, for sure. It's a stat category, but she has the whole personal narrative. She poured her heart into it. And Jason and I were there when the premiere of The Rarest, and she was extremely, extremely emotional during the Q&A.
It's extremely dear to her heart, and it shows. It's just maybe a little too personal, if that makes sense.
It's
just like...
I get what Jason's saying. I think it's just...
Yeah, okay.
Certain demographics within the Academy just probably aren't going to respond to it based on the inherent narrative of the story. And it's unfortunate, but it's probably the reality of the situation is that the Academy is still predominantly older white men. And
after 20th Century Woman last year, which I was really pulling for, I'm just very skeptic of movies even somewhat similar to it.
Yeah, but that was timing more than anything, and I think that's pretty clear.
I agree and disagree. I feel like I don't think 20th Century Woman would have fared any better under any different circumstances. I really think Annette Bening wouldn't have happened just because of just the understatedness of her character. Even though I disagree in some aspects, I kind of understand how it played on screen to people.
Do you think that there might be any type of anti-TV bias against Janney or Metcalf?
No, I don't think
at all. None whatsoever.
No, why? No, because I think
I'm just asking as a question.
I think if anything, people will be surprised, that they haven't been nominated for film industry type awards, even though they haven't done a ton of film. They're the type of actresses that they work hard, and people respond to their work constantly, whether on TV or in film. And it'll just be they're easy roles to recognize, because I think both performances, and I like Metcalf a fair bit more than I do Janney in their movies, just because I think Metcalf has a bit more of a tricky role to navigate. But they're both.
I agree.
They're just both. They show both actresses sort of diversity, dimension, whatever you want to call it. The sort of the sort of wide range of stuff that he can do. So I mean,
I know you could say like Janie's a little cartoony.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, but I don't think that's her fault even. I think that's maybe just because of the inherent nature of the film, right? The mockumentary style.
Yeah.
Of it. So I mean,
well, and also because Levana is a fucking lunatic.
that too.
I know. You would think like the film is like playing around in like just taking different creative liberties just for pure entertainment, but then they show her at the end and she has the freaking bird on her shoulder talking to the camera, the real like individual.
And that haircut, and it's just like, no, girl, you're a nut.
Yeah.
Oh well, so I mean, so here's a question then: do you think that benefits Metcalf over Janney just in terms of being more or less sympathetic? Because I don't think that matters so much in supporting actor. I think supporting actor doesn't mind villainous characters as much. A little bit less so for actress.
Yeah, between Laurie and Holly, they're the sympathetic mother types, and then you have Allison, who is the villain. Yeah. But I still feel like critics are just crazy about the performance out of Toronto, that I don't think we're going to have to worry about her. I
think so too, and I think Neon is they're ready to go. Yeah.
That's a perfect day, and they're smart not releasing it wide during Christmas when it's overcrowded and it could have, flopped between the competition. I think the strategy is really smart, and I think it's going to play really well on the screener, like incredibly well.
I think their strategy is going to be just right. I'm really glad to see yet another upstart, distributor breaking in. Like
just to clarify, are they releasing that wide in January?
They're gonna December. I mean, they'll keep releasing it wider and wider, and then go fully wide in January.
See, and I think that's smart because you're going to release it wide in January, and hopefully it'll be in theaters as long as the film gets award traction. You're going to be releasing it wide
as it's getting up Golden Globe nominations,
and the lead up to the Olympics. I think that's great timing for it. So I mean, I think they're really smart, and I think Neon's got a lot of smart people working there. I think the films they've acquired and distributed are really interesting. My skepticism with I, Tonya really has nothing to do with Neon. I think they're really smart. I think the release strategy they're using for it is really smart. So. I mean, personally, I think the max out for that movie is Robbie and Janney. I don't think it can really get anything more than that. But, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how...
If screenplay wasn't so overcrowded, I really think it could have been a given.
Yeah.
Yeah, this original screenplay this year is an absolute... I can't even believe it this year. It's insane. So, yeah, I don't think it's getting in either, so...
I think it's up there, but, yeah, I might have trouble breaking through. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's too competitive. There's too many more respected writers there who have ties to the industry and just in bigger movies in terms of scope and scale and distributors. So I mean, it's just going to be too tough, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I don't think the Writers Guild is going to give us any extra insights this year because of how specific their rules and regulations.
But the screenplay is zany enough where I feel like it's the type that it can maybe pull off like a WGA nom at least if it's eligible. I don't know.
Yeah, it's unique. It stands out. Like I said, I have
different. That's why people like it. It's not like an ordinary biopic. It's
unconventional. Yeah, and I think it's completely different than what people were expecting it was going to be before anybody saw it. I think that's probably the biggest attraction towards it. I think people were not expecting a black comedy, a mockumentary, which is sort of exactly what they got, and even has some sort of crime Fargo-esque things going on. I think Jason mentioned that. I think that's really astute. I think that's a smart observation because I didn't even think about that while watching it. But
after seeing it again, I'm like, this music is so familiar, and then I look up, it's the literal composer from Fargo.
But that's kind of where people entered 3 Billboards too. They were like, okay, this is going to be a sort of Fargo-esque, super dark comedy, and then it subverted those expectations by being a deeper film than it was. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that that is the type of movie that plays well on screener.
Yeah, I agree.
When you think something is a certain type of movie before you've seen it, and then you pop it in as a voting member of whatever body that you're a part of, in October and November, and especially as we always talk about over that Thanksgiving weekend, it's like, what are you going to watch with your family? Are you going to watch something that everybody can watch? Or are you going to watch, what is it? So something, I think all of those things are potentially great screener films. And we know with absolute fact that you need to play well on screener and be available on screener to get somewhere. So that's a good call.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I mean, with Three Billboards, for me, the interesting thing about that was In Bruges is probably one of the movies I rewatch the most. I just get a huge kick out of it. But with Three Billboards, I guess when I was watching it, I was sort of like, it's sort of like one of those things where, someone you really admire, director, writer you really admire, you see them doing something they've done for the first two acts, and then the third act, it goes in a direction you really weren't expecting, and it catches you off guard. And I think that's where the emotion of that film sneaks up on you. Because if you're like me and you know sort of the director's previous work, you're not really prepared for how emotionally satisfying and moving the third act of that film is. And I think that's where people are really going to respond to Three Billboards, is when they watch the Red Band trailer, they see Francis, cussing up a storm and whatnot. They don't really see...
Yeah, it's such a small aspect of the movie.
I know. They don't really see what transpires, especially in the second half of the movie, and how deeply, deeply satisfying and surprisingly emotional in its complexity the film gets. And I think that's why it's going to play well on screen.
Yeah, the characters are really complex, and I love it.
I think that is something that keeps happening with a lot of these writer-directors that find the film that is their breakthrough. The Coen brothers found that. Paul Thomas Anderson found that. I think it happens quite a bit, and this certainly looks like something that could happen for Martin McDonagh as well.
He's just going to sweep screenplay all year. Do you think, sort of like how Manchester did last year?
Yeah, I think so too. I think
he's already an Oscar winner. Did you know that?
I did not know that. No.
Yeah, he won for a short film.
Okay.
Oh my god, I totally forgot about
and
that.
I will.
It's the Christine Lottie. My goodness.
I will say he did get nominated for In Bruges, despite the fact that film didn't have the best reviews. I think it only has like a 67 on Metacritic. So the writer's branch clearly likes him a lot already as it is. If he could get in for a film that's not particularly baity and not particularly well reviewed, that means to me that I think he's an extremely easy nominee for.
I think it's the Frontrunner. The only problem is when people want to award a screenplay, they have to what's going to win Best Picture also takes screenplay too. Yeah. So if you're committing to Three Billboards winning, are you saying could it win Best Picture?
No, and that's why something like The Shape of Water,
and that would never win screenplay in my opinion, because that's criticized most about that movie.
But here's the thing I'll argue in favor of Three Billboards. It's one of the few films I can think of that could legitimately win 3 top 8 Oscars that aren't Best Picture in actress, supporting actor, and screenplay. I'm not necessarily saying it's going to win all 3, but if things break right, it could. And that's maybe one of the few, if only, film I can think of that can win 3 top 8 Oscars that aren't Best Picture. So that's where you have to take into consideration.
Yeah, I agree.
If things break right for it, could it go all the way? And I mean, if it wins actress, supporting actor, and screenplay, I mean, it kind of sort of has to win Best Picture. I mean, it would be hard to fathom it winning those 3 and not winning Best Picture. So
we all know how good Fox Searchlight is at this too.
Yeah, and it's
okay, but you guys both have Dunkirk still as your number 1. So.
Just because I just shifted a little away from Shape of Water. I just feel like it kind of won't resonate with audiences as much as I expected. I still think it's a top 5 contender. I just don't see it as a Best Picture winner anymore.
Neither do I. After seeing it, I don't sense and even after the reaction to it, I know the reviews have been really strong, but just a general sense, I don't sense the Best Picture winning passion for it. And here's the thing with Fox Searchlight: at some point, they're going to have to pivot to either Shape of Water or Three Billboards for their Best Picture push. And while most people seem to be of the mind that The Shape of Water is going to be that push, I'm not entirely sold. And I hope it's not just the fact that I love Three Billboards so much speaking, but I genuinely felt more passion for that movie. And obviously it showed with the People's Choice winner, just talking to people, TIFF and whatnot, and I felt more passion for that movie. But at some point they're going to have to pivot and make a choice about which movie, because you can't just have it both ways. You know, they're not going to be able to push these movies equally the whole season. They're going to have to make a choice between the two of them, which one they feel is going to give them the better chance of winning Best Picture. And right now, I'm not sure they're completely sold on that, but I think they put themselves in a good position with each film winning one major festival prize apiece, right? So they have options, and they're just going to wait to see how it all plays out and see what industry types respond to which movie better. So, yeah.
Do you think there would be any controversy with the sexuality in Shape of Water at all? Like,
you mean the fish fucking?
Not just that. Like, it literally opens up with her masturbating in a bathtub.
Spoiler alert.
I guess.
But I did not need to know that Sally Hawkins masturbates. So thank you so much, Jason.
I don't think so. I think it's just the inherent central relationship may prove difficult for some older, more conservative industry audiences, and I think that showed a TIFF, right? A lot of the.
I know. I'm just saying, like, will make audiences uncomfortable at all.
I mean, not for the most part. I don't think. I think some will.
Maybe it's like once that's out of the way, it's like, okay, so she's fucking a fish. Who
like
cares?
Introducing her as like a very sexual individual. I don't know.
I mean,
that's wow. Okay, goodness gracious, my lord. Okay, so Three Billboards is our Best Picture winner. You know, I'm actually, the more that we talk, and this is why I love doing these podcasts and talking to you guys and, like, you know, working through everything, is that I can change my thoughts and opinions just through conversation. And sometimes because our Best Picture and our Oscar prediction charts are ever changing, I can change them as we're having this conversation. And I've done a little bit so far. And I almost always do. And I'm now really kind of starting to gravitate toward the idea of Three Billboards being one of those, like, absolutely left field, how did this happen kind of wins. And if anybody's able to do that, Fox Searchlight is able to do that. And if the movie has the contemporary... I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but social and political elements that the new members are looking for in stories and in films, it makes a lot of sense that Three Billboards becomes this huge frontrunner. We already have Brian Bonafide has it as his number one, and that motherfucker is really, really good at this. It's a November release, and it's that you know, it's I clap back all the goddamn time about December releases, and even though I have Shape of Water at number one, I'm probably going to change it before I finish talking today. It's still a December goddamn release. I don't care if it's the 8th. So was La La Land.
The thing with Three
Billboards,
there's so many likable actors in that movie with people that the industry loves. Frances McDormand, Sam Rockwell, Woody Harrelson, Peter Dinklage, John Hawkes. You know, I would say all 5 of those are super, super likable people, like just on a genuine level when you see them in interviews right now. I don't know any of them personally, but I know especially with Sam Rockwell and Woody Harrelson, they're like two of the coolest dudes in the industry, you know. And I think Sam Rockwell, you know, it's time for him to get a nomination at the very least. I think people are on board with that, and I think people are completely sold that idea that he's completely overdue. And it's a shame that he hasn't been nominated yet. It's completely gratifying that I think he's 100% locked for nomination. I think he can absolutely win with the right push. Though we'll see about Willem Dafoe. I haven't seen the Florida Project, so I don't know.
The complete love letter. Like the role is just a complete love letter to the actor.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, Martin McDonagh said he wrote the two roles for Francis and Sam, and it completely makes sense because when you see the movie, it's like, these are.
It just plays to all his strengths.
Yeah, can you see two actors in those two central roles other than McDormand and Rockwell? Those are the two actors I would immediately think of for those roles too. So I mean,
and I read like Frances was very reluctant to take it because she didn't believe she believed she was too old for the role.
Yeah, which I guess goes part and parcel with Frances's whole demeanor of being brutally honest and self-efficating, but.
She's more than just self-effacing. She also is like "fuck you" to everybody else. So I'm really really excited to see Frances McDormand throughout this awards season again because I love her attitude. I love her thought about this. I love doing this, but if I ever take it as seriously as some people do, fucking shoot me.
Yeah.
Because people like Frances McDormand and their response to a lot of the pageantry and the rigmarole of rolling out a movie is everything. It's fantastic. It's so exciting and wonderful to see as the opposite end of the spectrum of the extremely thirsty awards, desperate people that participate in this.
Yeah,
I love it.
And I mean, her husband and his brother are exactly the same way, right? The Coen brothers, they have the same sort of attitude. If you see them, I think they won like 3 Oscars for No Country for Old Men between writing, directing, and producing. And by the second or third time they're up there, you can just see they're like, whatever, we were already up here, thanks, bye. So it's sort of like you get sort of sick and tired of seeing. Even as someone who follows this very intensely, you sort of get sick and tired of seeing the people with the complete and utter desperation. It's like, it's art, it's subjective, it speaks for itself, and, at least it should. And I think that's the way Frances goes about it, and I think it's completely admirable, and I love her for it. And I can't wait to see her on the awards circuit this year because I just love her whole persona and the way she carries herself. I think it's amazing. So...
if she's anything like she was at Venice, it's going to be the best season like in a long time. So I love it. I love it. I kind of want to close out because we're in a good place, but we haven't even talked about New York yet. And I kind of want to dip into that a little bit. Although when you look at the list, it's a really funny thing where it's this like combination of fantastic foreign films and really obvious Oscar bait. I mean, the opening night, centerpiece, and closing night are all Amazon films. It's insane to me, but it's all Amazon films. And it's going to be our first look at Last Flag Flying and at Wonder Wheel, which I feel like is an even bigger question mark than almost anything right now. Because obviously a lot of us, all of us, have Kate Winslet as top 5 contender. But there are also smatterings of Juno Temple and Jim Belushi in screenplay. And inevitably, Woody Allen controversy will come up in any of this conversation. I don't think we need to go deep into this now. We just need to say that it will be a part of the conversation. But what do you guys think the response to Wonder Wheel needs to be to secure, a place for Kate Winslet, or does it even need to be that much?
I think it needs to be at least solid in a year like this, just because Best Actress is a lot more competitive than it generally is. I don't think it has to be like, through the roof. I don't think people need to say, oh, this is Woody Allen's best movie. But for a nomination, I'd say it has to be at least solid, within like maybe Blue Jasmine territory. I suppose she could get in if the reception is a little less than that. But yeah, like you said, there's been murmurings about Juno Temple potentially being a contender, or Jim Belushi. The Jim Belushi thing, I have him at number 10, but I'm getting very strong Andrew Dice Clay vibes there, who I thought was fantastic in the film, Andrew Dice Clay. Honestly, I would have loved to see him nominated, but I'm sort of getting vibes like that, where it's like it's an actor who you don't really expect to give this type of performance in this type of movie, and maybe he has one or two sort of shining moments. Like Andrew Dice Clay has one really, really, really effective moment in Blue Jasmine, but that was really it. And so I'm not sensing it's going to be a contender beyond Winslet. And even then, I mean, if the reception isn't there, it's competitive enough where she could find herself on the outside looking in.
That would be so sad.
I'm sensing some slight sarcasm there, but I'll let it go.
Just a tiny bit. No, I mean, I look at our predictions, and both you and Jason have Jim Belushi at number 10.
There's a little bit of buzz from this one.
No, I'm not denying that at all. It is, and he has Twin Peaks from this year, so at least his profile is raised from what somebody would have thought that it would have been.
I just can't get a good feel from the movie. I know it's good, but I don't know how good.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know that much.
Yeah, I think Woody Allen is too much of an unknown quantity at this point in his career that you never really know what you're going to get until the movie's actually seen. So, I mean, I'm not willing to make definitive proclamations or predictions about how the movie's going to be received. It could turn out to be a Best Picture contender. It could turn out to be like a non-starter altogether. So
I don't know. There's always one movie out of NYFF that
fuck you, Jason.
that like enters the Best Picture race in some, or like that is like very acclaimed and under like in some scenario. And I'm just feeling like this year's slate of opening, centerpiece, and closer, neither of the three really stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
like Last Flag Flying has like the most potential, but I'm just a little iffy on it.
But that movie is going to play so well to the Academy, that even if
Last Flag Flying is the dad
exactly.
movie.
I hope so, because I really like Richard Linklater. I've just heard some mixed things, but I hope.
My whole feeling with
but I mean, we thought that about Sully too.
That's true, but I mean, I think Sully it came out in September. I think people maybe, I mean, it was a box office hit, but I feel like people maybe didn't remember it as much as people expected they were going to. But I mean, Last Flag Flying.
Well, that was also Warner Brothers, who just is not very good at this game.
Yeah, and Last Flag Flying to me, it's just like out of all the contenders this year, it just seems like the perfect, like you said, the perfect dad movie. It almost feels like the actual Alexander Payne movie this season. You know what I mean? Like Alexander Payne stepped outside his box and made a movie that to me didn't really work. And Richard Linklater has like basically made his own Alexander Payne movie because it feels like it's like a road movie, sort of akin to maybe about Schmidt or Nebraska in certain ways. So
I like that.
So it's interesting. So I mean, to me it feels like that movie more than any other is designed to play well with the Academy, which is interesting because to me Richard Linklater has not really made too many overtly Oscar baity movies in his career. I mean, he's made movies that have gotten nominations, but they've sort of gotten nominations by the sole fact that they were terrific movies or responded to really well, like the Before trilogy or Boyhood, movies that weren't really designed to make Oscars, but sort of just lucked their way into the situation. With this one, it feels like he's making a movie specifically designed to play well to that demographic. So we'll see. I mean, if the response isn't great, I mean, I can still see it sneaking in just based on the fact that I think it's going to play really well to that demographic. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, it's based on characters that have already proven themselves to be, Oscar nominatable.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
But I do love that he followed up, Boyhood with something that was completely, not Oscar material.
Yeah.
I loved that. That was really cool. Instead of thinking like, oh my God, I got so close. What can I do next?
Yeah.
Because he never struck me as that kind of filmmaker, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And, in a lot of ways, the same could be said about Todd Haynes, where, Carol did okay, but fell short in a lot of ways. And his follow-up to that is this weird, kids movie that takes place in two different eras and is like, zigzag cut back and forth to each other. And it doesn't seem on the surface, a very Oscar-friendly kind of movie, but honestly, I think that it is, because it's a director working with kids, which they love. It's gorgeous looking. It has a fantastic score. It has great cinematography. It has really good performances. I think, and it's so strange because I was so high on Wonderstruck over like early summer. I was like, yes, this is my like number one, and I'm gonna push this. And it just kind of started going away, as it was screened at festivals, and I saw it a couple of weeks ago, and I adore it. I think it's a fantastic film. But I feel like, sort of like with A24, Amazon has a lot of movies to look at, to push. And I don't see this as being their main push, which is too bad.
Yeah, I mean, the reception at Cannes was surprisingly muted. And then what I heard was that, well, obviously it was evident because they gave it a prime slot in their program, that the New York Film Festival Committee obviously really responded to the film. And I think they gave it a prime slot to maybe sort of give it a second wave. And I think that's what maybe Amazon's hoping for, is that at New York Film Festival it can really have sort of a second surge or a second wave of stronger response. And if it doesn't, I mean, that's probably the end of it. But at least it's going to get a second chance for people to really respond to it in a big sort of slot in a major program at a major festival. So
I hope so. I mean, it was at Venice too, and nobody gave a shit.
Yeah. I mean, Telluride, I didn't even really hear anybody talk about it. There were maybe like 2 or 3 tweets about it, and that was it. So I mean, this sort of seems like the last kick at the can for it. And if people don't respond to it here, I think it's just going to have a really, really difficult time, because, like you said, Amazon just has way too many movies, and way too many movies at this moment, at least, in stronger positions.
Are you predicting it for anything right now?
Me, maybe a tech or two, but nothing.
Yeah, I just have it in for score now.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, right now I've got. Let me see. I bumped it out of screenplay, even adapted, which is like totally open. Yeah, like number 6 in cinematography.
Is the score like that?
I do
great.
I do still have it in costume design, because we are looking at 2 different
what does it have
periods.
It's
Sandy Powell, who's also an executive producer. It's 1920s black and white and 1970s saturated color. I think that's I think it's a pretty okay nomination. Yeah, I have it in number 6 in like so many different categories.
Oh wait, you're right.
God.
You said Sandy Powell. Oh god, I gotta.
It's Sandy Powell.
Sorry, I was thinking production design. Yeah, costumes.
Yeah, and she's also an executive producer on the film. So
all right, so costumes
I feel
are probably the safest bet.
That's the only thing I have it in top 5 right now. So, which is kind of breaking my heart. And I said earlier that it was at Venice, but that was incorrect. It was Telluride. So just to clarify that. But yes, as Matt said, the response there was like, okay, whatever. We've got Battle of the Sexes and Darkest Hour and fucking other things. Shape of Water, and we have Guillermo del Toro doing a Q&A on the steps, and that's the kind of stuff that oh my god, it's something that I feel like I want to talk about every season, and that is the accessibility that filmmakers give themselves to critics and pundits and stuff, which can absolutely change and alter buzz and where they start pushing things or promoting things, because it's pretty. I mean, pundits and critics push and promote movies that they want every year. That's fine, and they have their own critics awards, and that's what they're for. But I do feel like a lot of times, especially the more high profile you are, and the more your publication has visibility, you're much more susceptible to studios and filmmakers pushing their their product onto you, and we've seen that all the time. And it's both, I don't know, distressing and a good thing, because it definitely gives visibility to smaller films, but it also gives carte blanche to a lot of basic product, as long as they have, really good publicists.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say. I won't name the pundit, but I'll just say that a significant pundit put out a list of his top 10 Best Picture contenders recently, and then sent out a tweet shortly after implying that studios who had movies that weren't on that top 10 list were getting angry at him for not including them. So a lot of this comes down to the early framework of how the race is shaped. And once you're considered in or out, it's sort of hard to put yourself back in the discussion once you're sort of phased out of the discussion. So I think that it's difficult, if you're not considered in early on, it's difficult to actually get in, because there's only so many films that people can actually see in a given time, because even awards voters have to go on with their day-to-day lives. And once they see a list of movies, it's like, okay, this is the list of movies I need to see, because these are the only ones actually in consideration. And it does a disservice to the smaller movies when those smaller movies aren't included in the more preliminary lists. So it would be nice if there was maybe a way to be a little more inclusive early on in predictions, and make side notes of, hey, even if this movie isn't, absolutely in the predictions, it's at least on the cusp. That's why I like what we do here at Awards Watch, where we have the top, in our Gold Rush gang, we have the top 10 list of contenders, and you can list them 1 to 10, rather than just 1 to 5, because you're saying, hey, these 6 to 10 contenders are also in the race and also, worth viewing. So I think studios just increasingly are getting frustrated by the notion of a lack of inclusivity, just based on how many slots there are, in a given category.
I absolutely agree with everything you said, completely. And it's also one of the reasons why I like that we do what we do so early. I mean, we start this shit in March, for Christ's sake. Everything that we have is either based on Sundance or based on, what things look like on paper. And from that point, a studio can kind of start creating a campaign or an idea of what they want to do. And a lot of pundits don't start official predictions until right now, or even later, like after NIF, New York Film Festival, so that they can, see things and not look like asses for predicting something that ends up being, blowing up in their face. And I get that. But it's no secret that awards campaigning is more than like 6 months of a 12-month year for studios. It's a long period. Mm-hmm. And this year is no different. We're just about to embark on October, and we've got October, November, December, January, February. That's 5 full months of massive amounts of campaigning, tons of advertising money, all of which I'm trying to gobble up. Thank you very much. So give me all your money. It's a huge portion of the year. So you're absolutely right when somebody high profile says, here's what I think is the top 10, and you're not on that list. Oh my God. You get to spend twice as much money as you thought you were going to spend this award season. So, Jason, I heard you laughing.
I know, I heard someone laughing in the background. I was wondering what that was.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, like you said, because we do this so early, I just want to point out that give us a little credit. We were way out in front on Moonlight last year. Just throwing that out there. Reminder.
We're out front on a lot of things. Usually by September, we have 4 or 5 of the Best Actress nominees locked.
Yeah, and I mean,
this year's tougher.
And I think that's why it's important, doing this as early as possible. I know people are so oh, don't want to talk about Oscars, in June or July or whatever. And it's understandable, you get sort of fatigue after a while. But if you don't get in on the conversation early, and you don't open up the list of possibilities, that list of possibilities gets narrower and narrower and narrower as it goes along. And you're stuck with a list of 10 movies, and it's the same 10 movies you're going to see throughout the entire season. And that makes it no fun.
Yep.
That's not fun for anybody. It's not fun for the people watching. It's not fun for the people who love certain movies that maybe aren't in that list of 10, but are loved by a large faction of the film community. So I think it's more exciting when there's more films in the mix, just plain and simple. It's better for everybody. It's better for the studios. Maybe it's not better for the major studios who have maybe a movie or two in that top 10 sort of sphere, but at least creates more intrigue in the race. And I hope that pundits do a better job of making sure they're not just including a strictly regimented list of movies that is 10 or less.
Well, and some do, and that's right to my point, is that if you have a studio that's going to get your filmmakers and your actors on your podcast, you're going to predict that movie. If you get those interviews, you're going to be kinder to that movie, and we see it all the time. And I only say this because my access is not the same as a lot of people. I don't live in LA and I don't live in New York. If I did, I would have a lot more access, and I would have a lot more susceptibility to suggestion. I know I will never move there, so it's not like it's going to, be something that's going to infect how I gauge movies. But I still see it every single year, and it's actually more and more each year because there are more people that do this. The money gets thinner of where they can spend it. You have Amazon and Netflix who have a boundless amount of money that they can spend, and the other studios are clamoring to try and match that. So every year sort of feels like a one-upmanship. So to be able to kind of look at movies purely from an academic perspective and a less emotional and a less financial perspective, I feel like that's why we're a little more successful at what we do. I know a lot of us do have a certain amount of access, or at least visibility. But I do think we give ourselves the distance to be able to judge things a little more objectively. And I think that's why we're a little more successful in doing so. So that's the end of that rant. Jesus. I don't even know where that came from, but yeah. I don't know. I think it still all ties into the fact that we're rudderless this season, and that so much is up for grabs, which means that every studio is like, oh my god, I have a shot, and everybody's kind of like throwing everything they have at it. And the next couple of months are going to be insane, absolutely insane. So I'm super excited.
Oh, I 100% agree. Like, I have Dunkirk at number 1 for Best Picture right now, but to me, it feels like a default frontrunner I have right now. Like, I don't feel as confident as I normally do in that being the Best Picture frontrunner. Like, usually by this time, I'm fairly confident in something. La La Land at this time last year, I was fairly confident. How could you not be? But, I mean, this year, obviously that didn't pan out, but, I mean, at the time, it seemed like it was the clear frontrunner. But right now, it feels like it's completely up for grabs, and it's really exciting. It's exciting when there's more confusion, disarray. So we'll see how this pans out. I mean, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. This is probably actually a really good place to close out, unless Jason, do you have any thrilling or exciting closing statements?
Not really.
All right. What was that?
I said Viva La Ladybird.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, Viva pretty much everything A24 this season. I'm
Agreed.
You know. And I haven't gotten a cent for them, so I can say that. So all right, cool. Do you guys want to advertise any of your social media where people can find you, or do you want to stay secret?
Matt.
Well, I mean, I don't really have nearly as many followers as you two fine gentlemen, but and I think that may be because my Twitter account is spread between sports tweets and film-related tweets, so I don't quite have a specificity there, but it's Matt24Js. If anybody cares to follow someone ranting and raving about sports and movies, but Jason, you can go ahead if you want.
At Jason Osiah.
There you go. And, of course, I am at awards_watch.com. Please, always check the Gold Rush Gang Oscar predictions from the main page, because, as I mentioned earlier, they can change in the moment. I've changed a couple since this podcast started, and I see at least one of you guys have as well. And that's kind of what it's all about. We do official predictions, official, like the first week of every month, but they can change throughout the year or throughout the month, based on, once something is released or a festival release or something like that. And then it's kind of exciting to watch the progress of something. So check those out. So we've got the New York Film Festival is up next. So in a couple of weeks, we will have another podcast. I know it's not a huge festival, but I always go to the Mill Valley Film Festival in Northern California because the access there for me is tremendous. And by that time, every Oscar Best Picture nominee is already going to be there. So it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. So I will definitely be reporting from there and reviewing from there. So yes, please check all of us out on Twitter. Come to awardswatch.com and like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and all the really fun stuff like that. And thank you very much, both Jason and Matt, for joining me today. I really, really appreciate your insight and love that you are here to do it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Goodbye.